Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of GM Philosophy in the Afternoon. This is the call-in show, and I'm super pumped. I'm hoping everyone is having a great day. I'm having a great day. I'm actually after this going to go work out, and we're just continuing the journey, continuing the mission. I'm going to put the invite link in the comments. I'm going to pin it. Give me just a moment to do that, actually. I've got to open my YouTube to do that. And we're going to get it rolling. We talk about anything you want to talk about today. You want to talk about a topic? You have a question? You want to share something from your game? Talk about D&D. Hey, Drew and Dragons. Austin Walker's in the chat. How's it going, Austin? And Drew and Dragons, how's it going, Drew? Great to see you. Thanks for being here. I am doing well. I'm doing really good. Herminator says, "Yay, happy Friday." Happy Friday to you as well, Herminator. Good to see you. Good to have you in the chat. Yeah, no, things are going great. Good and got a decent question, says Austin. Heck yeah, awesome. Well, we're going to jump into it. I'm just going to put this link in here. All right. Link is there. And let's get it rolling. I pinned it so people can access it throughout the stream. But yeah, no, things are going really good. Playing in a one shot tonight by Crossheart. I don't think I'm going to live stream it or anything. The tech is a little wonky when I'm a player because I can only stream one screen basically, and that kind of makes it somewhat problematic because usually the voices are in Discord and then the game is on the screen. And so it's a little bit funky. Drew says, "Living the dream, brother. My players are in a lost situation where the city they inhabit is being claimed by an ancient dragon, sent by the god of affliction to claim the place. They are low resources, though, so working to save as many as they can from the town." Oh, very nice. That sounds awesome, actually. Heck yeah, that sounds really awesome. I'm pretty excited about the Barren Lands campaign that's running on Tuesday evenings. That campaign is reaching a point where the player characters they just fought kind of like their first kind of like boss fight against this kind of like witch dryad, and it went really well. She escaped and she's all scarred up and beat up, so I'm excited for kind of a second round arc with her. I love it when villains come back around for revenge when they've lost. Adventure manager's on the call. Hey, how's it going, Adventure Manager?
Oh, going good. I got really a bit of a quandary, I guess, between natural and artificial difficulties in tabletop games.
Natural and artificial difficulties. Can you describe that for me a little bit? I'm not quite sure I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, natural difficulties, I guess, would be kind of your discrepancy between player meta knowledge and character in world knowledge. Like, hey, it's the middle of summer, we're going to go through a swamp. We know there's going to be insects. Character would be like, yeah, I'm going to buy insect repellent. Versus a player, like, should I get insect repellent, save money? Just a number of things there, I guess.
Oh, okay. So that sounds kind of like it is almost like a meta knowledge, almost immersion role play type thing. And your question about it is how to deal with it or how to talk to your players about it, or like.
Well, just like one person said, well, oh yeah, it's like climbing a skyscraper versus climbing a mountain. I'm like, well, yeah, but which one feels more natural, I guess, in a sense, too. And they said, oh yeah, what if you put all this stuff in their way? Well, if the player's constantly trying to go east and they get everything all at once like that, like they described, like, yeah, it's like definitely like there's a hard wall there from stopping you from going east or something. Like, I haven't generated this part of the world. Here's a bunch of junk in your way to stop you from going east. I'm like, well, I want to go to the Dragon Coast or whatever weird, you know.
Okay. So wait a minute. So are you a player in this game, or are you running the game?
I'm more so run games, but yeah, I'm just trying to think like what I mean. Artificial difficulty, I guess everything could be considered that. Like, oh, the DM, you put that there, and it wouldn't naturally be here or something. And it's like, well.
Oh, I see.
Eh, but yeah, wolves should be in the forest. Golem should be in the cities. I mean, that's kind of natural, but it's like question marks on that too.
Gotcha. Okay. So no, as a okay, so
Hmm.
As a general rule, here's my take on that, and that's actually a really good thing to talk about because this comes right down to actually I think immersion and believability, and I think if you're a game master and you've reached a point where you're putting quote unquote artificial things in players' way specifically to keep them from reaching an objective or specifically to slow them down, and it's not game related, it is kind of like meta related, like for example, maybe you think to yourself, I don't want them to reach the coast for some reason, whatever it is, the game master's thinking that to themselves, is like, I don't want them to reach the coast. And then it's like, so maybe I'll put a big ice wall here that's pretty much impossible to climb over. It'll take them like several sessions to even think about getting past it. Um, so it's like whether or not the ice wall would be a natural in-game structure or it was conjured just to keep the players away from there. I do think it's kind of problematic that the game master would say, I don't want them to go to the coast, because I think that's tipping over into kind of like railroady territory, and I think that part of the beauty of TTRPGs is that players create the story, and then as game masters we want to like honor that. So I might think to myself, I don't think the players are going to go to the coast until like level 11 or something, but then at level 2 they're like, let's go to the coast. um, then it's like, okay, well, that's where the story's going. Let's roll with it. What are they going to find there? I don't know. What would be there, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, that's like my 2 cents on that issue. Um, I kind of,
I'm getting good feedback in the advice channel too.
oh yeah, heck yeah,
Yep.
that's awesome. Um, Mr. Vincent says, sorry, I don't understand what the heck Adventure Manager was talking about in the advice channel, so my suggestions are based on a misunderstanding, whatever. That's
All
funny.
good, all good.
Damn text communication. It is that way. It is that way.
Oh
Text.
yeah, there's a good one, Drew and Dragons. Telegraph for them. Warn the players beforehand.
Yeah, you could warn them. Um, Below and above board. I think above board conversations are important in a game. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with stopping for a minute and saying to the player or to the players, hey, now just out of game, I just want to warn you, this is actually a higher level, like dangerous place, like very high key dangerous. Like, you could say that in game too. In game, you could say, roll me a history check. And then no matter what they roll, you could say, from studying that this area that you're about to go to is filled with very dangerous monsters. Like, this is actually a very scary place to go. And the thought of going there would actually be like, I don't know if your character is scared, but it would be understandable for them to be scared if they were, because of the danger, right? And then you could say, and then you could zoom out of game and say, out of game, I'm trying to tell you that there's like really dangerous stuff there. Your characters might die. So it's like, what do you want to do? um, anyway, I think that having above board conversations is actually really, really good. And I think that it should happen more, actually. And it's important for players also to like keep that separate, which I think is not too much to ask. Drew says, my guys were about to charge into Face That Dragon, as I mentioned. They would have been smoked. So their gods were all giving them messages, etc., to think twice before charging in. God told them, a messenger oracle messaged them. Your PCs live in that world every day. The players inhabit the world a few hours a week. Yes, no, that's actually really true. That's super true. And Jonathan Moore says, to avoid the issue of fight always over flight, I'll tell them this is above you. Yeah, just making them aware of it, both in game and out of game. Sometimes it's like that. Sometimes it's like there's a monster, and you say to them, roll a nature check, and they roll, and it's like, oh, your character knows this is a very dangerous monster. There's very high likelihood that this could be a fatal encounter. And then if you really want to drive it home, you could zoom out of game and say, and just for you players, me as the GM, I'm telling you a little bit of meta knowledge here. This is actually very, very much for the level that your characters are at. This is a very deadly encounter. So just so you know, it's like very highly lethal. Just so you're aware, Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. Um, sometimes, how can I say this? Sometimes when we try to give information in game uh, too much to a certain point, that can even break immersion. Like if it's almost uncanny, like if there are road signs constantly warning the player characters to turn back, and we're putting them there because we're trying to warn them, that can sometimes be less immersive than if we just stop and zoom out of game and have an above table conversation about it. Above table conversations don't have to ruin immersion because they're not happening in the game, they're happening outside of the game. um anyway, Mr. Cheese Poof says, nice live during lunch. Heck yeah. Well, anyway, Austin says, this is where I can use that prophecy skill and just show their dead bodies beforehand. Yes, you totally can. Austin, aren't you Austin Walker, adventure manager?
Indeed.
Okay. It's like, this is meta. I'm talking to you, and then I'm also showing your chats on the screen.
All good.
um,
And see, I was a little concerned about that too. I was like, well, this isn't Vancient magic like fire and forget spells. That was very old school. And I'm not really a fan of that one either, because why not just have spell scrolls and just, basically have ammunition?
yeah. Mr. Vincent asks, why are DMs placing barriers or creatures or whatever they don't want players to encounter? Um, I don't know, actually, Mr. Vincent. I kind of think that players should go see that thing, and the GM should let them tell that story. And if they die, they die. I guess that's how I feel about it. Drew says, I agree that the players should be able to juggle what they know and what their characters know. I also think that, I had an interesting comment on a I had an interesting comment on my YouTube channel the other day. Somebody commented. I made a comment about cutscenes, and then they asked, and I don't even know. I'd like to talk about this actually. Let me see if I can put this on the screen because this is a really interesting conversation, and I think that this is actually relevant to this. Let me see if I can find it. We went back and forth for several comments. Okay, here we go. I'm gonna try to share this on my screen. I think I can share this. Share screen. Is this the one? Yeah, this is the one here. All right. Okay, so here's a conversation that was had. Okay, by Robocopster, and I don't know if you're watching Robocopster, but if you are, feel free to jump in. We could talk about it more. But so I was talking about Caddic players, no problem, and I gave an example in this video that maybe if player characters predict something and you think that that's like a good prediction, then you could play into it, maybe change it up a little bit, but still play into it, like use their idea, which is not a new concept. A lot of game masters do that. They play off the characters' ideas or the players' ideas. But then I gave an example of like, what if you intended for them to go to the tavern, but they instead say, the one place we don't want to go is to the tavern because we think someone's waiting for us there for some reason. It's like there could be danger there. But as a GM, you had no concept of placing danger there. You might have been like, it's just going to be a tavern, whatever. But then they go the opposite way. So now the session you had planned has to change because they're not going to the place you thought they were going to. But because they predicted there was danger, I was like, but you could also make a cutscene like at the end of the session where it zooms to the tavern, and then you see this villain there with his guards, and he says, someone must have tipped them off. Go track them down, or something like that. So it was like a fun thing. The players could be like, there was danger. So it'd be kind of a fun thing. And that's the comment I made. And then Copster says, question, if the party goes into the forest instead of the town, then how are they going to see the NPC dude in the tavern stroking his beard and growling out a new plan? And then I said they won't. Only the players will see it. It's an off-camera cutscene, which is something that I use a lot in my games. And it turns out that this is not as common as I thought it was. It turns out there are a lot of GMs who actually don't use cutscenes. Not only that, but there are some GMs who do not like this idea at all. Robocopster says, so the players are allowed to metagame, which is not really, I said it is a cinematic cutscene. The players know about it, but not the characters. It's for fun and flavor. And then Robocopster says, so the players get to know about the plan to come after their characters, but the characters aren't allowed to prepare for it. That doesn't sound very fun. Which was that was an interesting comment thread to me because 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 it's like, okay, why wouldn't that be fun? Now, if you're just doing cutscenes all the time and there's no if you're doing cutscenes all the time and there's no like role playing going on because all you're doing is cutscenes, that's no fun. However, um,
Well, would you rather have the players just go to combat, then make a choice A, B, or C, basically skipping over the cutscenes and social stuff, and then just going on to whatever dungeon that they picked from A, B, or C? Would that
well,
be?
what I'm saying is like so this separation of player knowledge and character knowledge um, is necessary if you're going to use cutscenes, right? So it's like if you are going to have a cutscene that the characters don't see, but the players know about it, then it's like, why are we even doing the cutscene? Well, we're doing the cutscene for the same reason they would use a cutscene in a movie. They cut away to kind of show you another element of the story, but in TTRPGs, we're not watching this movie or watching the story. The player characters are creating the story. So you're showing the players a part of the story somewhere else. Now players have the situation where they're saying, okay, like I saw the cutscene of the villain, and so I kind of know he's coming, but my character doesn't. I don't think that this should pose a big problem or quandary. I don't think this is difficult to juggle, but it does take a little bit of role playing maturity to juggle those things. But as it turns out, this is not as popular of a thing as I thought it was. I thought to myself, well, most GMs probably use cutscenes, is kind of what I have thought. But it turns out from comments I've gotten that that is not the case. And some people actually even have no concept of how to use those.
I was about to ask, when's the best time to implement a cutscene?
I think at the very end of a session to set up a cliffhanger.
Yeah,
Uh,
say that's just a cliffhanger then.
yeah, yeah. Drew says, yeah, I can see their point, but that is predicated on the point of the cutscene. If you take from it that they're supposed to gain knowledge from it versus if you're trying to give the players a show. So yeah, I think that the idea is to give the players a show in the sense of you're kind of like maybe setting up the next session or you're kind of getting them pumped up for like maybe a coming battle or something. And I do not think I do not think that it's difficult to separate that knowledge when you're playing. Um, some people are player versus DM. Okay, no, that's true. It shouldn't be that way though. And I think that if a game is feeling like that, then it's already going in a bad direction. Drew says, and this is a hard thing to do when you feel like you are always fighting for your life every session. Okay, I feel like if players feel that way, it's kind of like one of two things is happening. It's like either it's like a very dangerous setting in the campaign and players are very attached to their characters and afraid legit afraid of them dying or something like that, like really like they do not want their character to die, so they have like an attachment to their character like that, or the GM is just really out to get them and it does feel like a player versus GM thing. um, I will say this. I think it's really good for players to be attached to their characters. There should be kind of a fear of death, but I also think that I think that players should aspire to a level of maturity where they understand that the possibility of death and maybe if death happens, this is a natural part of the story and that it's not necessarily a thing to be feared, but if it happens, it's a thing that can be sad, but also it might be a great chapter, possibly the last chapter for that character in the story. Um, but interesting, Drew. Very interesting points. Some of these points are quite foreign to me, and I'm surprised that they exist. Like when you said, um, "Oh no, wait, that wasn't the comment."
I think character
Some
backstories to an
people,
extent why they we like our character so much and everything. I wrote this whole 5 pages for them, and and then you just kill them off session one or something stupid. It's like, well, like no, I wasted all my time and effort. I'm like, well, you should have just been a farmer from nowhere, from nobody, And
See, okay, now that's a good thing to bring up because I don't think it's a waste. Like if I create a deep backstory for a character and I play that character for 5 sessions, I've actually done that before. I one time was playing in a game that one of my friends was running, and I played a halfling paladin of Saloon, and she was like, I loved her character. She was amazing. I made this whole rich backstory for her. She had this like quirky attitude, and she was like this really uppity, like religious figure. And then she died 5 sessions in fighting undead. Like she died. And actually, in that campaign, this was really interesting. So she died, and then I was like, GM, is there any way that she could possibly come back or something? Because I really love this character. I don't really want her story to end. And then what the GM said was, no, you know, she can't. In fact, you'll have to create another character, but I'm going to say you can't make it a paladin. Like that's what the GM said, because my first character was a paladin. Which to me seemed a tiny bit strange. But it's like, okay, that's fine. And her story was done, and I created a new character. Um, and it was sad. It was sad, but it happens. And so I think that understanding that it's the telling of a story is kind of important too. But you don't want to go so far in that direction that the players also don't care. You should want them to care about their characters. Got a couple comments here. Catch up on. Mr. Vincent says, "Give the players something to chew on. So much fun. It's no different than players talking to each other or DM on days away from the table. Discussions, decisions, tactics all occur by the players." Yeah, I agree. That's true. Mr. Cheesepoof says, "Session 0 can fix a lot of that with honesty on what kind of game entire group is looking for, including the DM." I agree. Marshmallows to hell mode. It's good to establish that, or I'm sorry, what looking for from the beginning. I agree. I think that is a good thing. Session 0 is a great time to talk about that, and I think it should be talked about that. Gonzalo Cortez says, "Hey, first time here. Even in harsh and dangerous environments, the DM is always rooting for the players, even if they are the monsters or the villains." I agree. The DM should be rooting for the players, and I often say it like this: the GM should be the player's greatest advocate. He should be trying to help them have the best experience possible, not necessarily make them invincible or give them unbreakable plot armor, but help them tell the best story possible. We got Herminator on the line. How's it going, Herminator?
Hey,
How's your day going?
not too bad. Got a few minutes left to break.
Nice.
I've got a player-driven versus plot-driven question for you. I know
Okay.
you talk a lot about if the players decide where things are going. What
Yeah.
if, let's say, you have an idea for a campaign that just we'll say Lord of the Rings. There's a ring. They have to get to Mount Doom. Kind of, you have that general idea at the beginning, and you have players join that story. What do you do when, say, they're like, oh well, we're not going to go to Rivendell. We're going to go west to the ocean and try to sail to the Undying Lands. Are you going to, I guess, just give up on your destroy the ring and Mount Doom story and let the players theoretically run rampant and all your work goes to waste? Or
That's a super good question. And I think that is the question a lot of GMs ask, because players will often go in a different direction than you expect, but sometimes they'll completely abandon the plot that you thought was going to go, right? So, okay, so there's 3 elements to this. Number 1, I think talking about it at session 0 is important. Like you might even say to the player something like this: "Hey, I have this like story. Basically, there's this like MacGuffin, and then there's going to be like a plot surrounding it, this magic ring or whatever." It's like, now that's like that is a story that a big story in this. And that's what I envision the characters embarking on, like that mission. Are you guys interested in playing that game? Like, I think that you can set it up like that. In fact, I think that setting up really story driven, like mystery campaigns has to be done that way, because there's a certain point where you need to be able to prepare some things, right, to tell that story. So I think talking to players about it in the beginning is really important. But then players might say, yeah, we're interested in that. Or they might say something like, no, actually, like, I don't know that my character would even want to do that. And so then you can have that conversation. But let's say that you're already in the game and you're trying to let them make their own choices, and they just abandon the story that you thought it was going to be told. Personally, my approach to this is always the same. Remember that this isn't really the story of the Ring and Mount Doom. This is actually the story of these player characters, and what they choose to do actually is the plot. This is how I think is the best way for game masters to conceptualize it. So if I'm playing and I think to myself, okay, I'm preparing Mount Doom, I'm preparing all these battles and Rivendell, and I'm preparing this, but then they're like, okay, well, the one place we don't want to go is Mount Doom. We're going the opposite way. We're going somewhere else. And then it's like, I see, so this is definitely not going where I thought it was going. I think that this is a creative time to say, okay, where are they going and what adventures are they going to have? And then maybe there are elements of that story that show up in other places. Like maybe they go to the Undying Lands and they realize that there are agents of the Nazgul terrorizing people there, and it's related to the Mount Doom thing, right? So anyway, that's kind of my answer. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, I guess. I guess it comes back to a little bit of like I like less improv, and I just feel like it's probably for me it's probably a bit session zero thing where it's like, hey, I've got this idea of a story. It'd be really nice if you guys don't completely derail it, but I'll let you make some choices, but there is going to be a big bad, and hopefully we can have a discussion that you will eventually take care of the big bad that's trying to destroy the world. Because if not, then you're voluntarily letting your character die because you're not dealing with the big bad.
Yeah. Well, you and I have talked about this before, and it sounds like you like prepping the story really matters a lot to you as a game master. Like that's the style you like to run. So if I were you, when I started a game, I would just tell that to the players. I'd say, hey, I'm not really the type of GM who likes to just roll with chaos. I like to know where we want the story to go beforehand. Here's my proposed kind of like story arc. You don't have to give them like enough to give spoilers, but kind of just in general, like there's this war and there's this item, and your characters are gonna have it, and you're gonna realize there's a mission attached to it, and that's the mission I envision for my campaign. Would you guys be willing to follow that storyline? If so, then you'd be great players for my game. If not, I'm sorry, this might not be the game for you. I would run it like that if I were you, because if that matters a lot to you, then that's important to talk about.
I feel a little bit of oh, you're going to the city, or you're going to the tavern, and then you're like, oh, we're gonna go camp out in the woods. I would almost feel like those kinds of decisions. I'd be like, well, I'd have them decide to go out into the woods or not at the end of the session. Whether or not they were going into the town or the woods, that's where I would end the session, because then I'd be like, okay, you've made this decision, now I can plan for that decision for next session. Trying to improv something in the middle.
Yeah, no, I think that if that matters a lot to you, then just having that conversation with players, and I would even say that, like exactly what you just said to me, I would say that to the players. I'd say, okay, so guys, as we reach the end of the session here, just for me, so I can plan the next session, I would like to know if you guys plan to go to the woods or go to the tavern. And then, I would just ask that whenever you decide that, just stick with it, because hint, hint, I'm going to plan out that, and I want to be able to use what I planned. I would actually just say that to them. I think that there might be some players who might not be into that idea, but there's a lot of players who'd probably really understand that, I feel like, and would be cool with it. What were you going to say, Adventure Manager? I feel like you were going to say something.
A bit. I was going to say, how much of a sandbox is your game, basically?
Well, yeah, it sounds like Herminator is not wanting to run really a sandbox. You're wanting to run like a plot-driven game. It sounds
A
like.
plot-driven, breathing world. Like if you, I may not have everything planned out. I may not have the middle plan, but like if I'm thinking that there's going to be a big battle at the end and destroying the ring, whether or not they go to Lothlorien or Rohan first, like I'm up for players deciding smaller things and then you making plans for that. But I'm at the same point, the big bad has a plan, has a motivation. He's gonna do what he's gonna do no matter what the players decide. And I
Yeah.
guess that's kind of the plot driven idea.
Yeah, that's super cool. No, that's super cool. And being aware of that and being confident in it when you play in your games or run your games, I think is very good. I think that some game masters are just in general wanting to run more sandboxy than others. I tend to be a very sandboxy GM. I think more toward that end than most because I love to improvise. It's actually one of my favorite things to do. I like to prepare for sessions too, but I always put in kind of just like only the bare basics for prep, and then players actually end up not using it half the time. And I might be able to use it later, which is okay, and I have no issue with that. But that's also possible because I'm very very like I really enjoy the improvisation part of the sandboxiness.
Cool. Well, my break's done. I gotta go back. So
Well, hey, have a great day.
thanks for the chat. Yep.
Thank you. We got a couple good comments here. I wanna pursue. Let's see, where did we go back to here? Drew said, I want my players to fear the world and want me to help them survive it. Tell me what you're trying to do. Don't hide your intentions from me. The DM versus PC mentality makes that hard to do with trust. I agree. And I think that approach is right. It's like, tell me what you want to do. I want to help you figure out how to get your player to that place. Like maybe they're trying to, maybe they have this idea that they want to create a suit of armor from the scales of all kinds of different lizard monsters. And if they tell me about that, then it's like, oh yeah, let's figure out like how many lizard monsters you need to kill and what tools you need, and let's make it happen. And then if there's a DM versus PC mentality, if the players think, well, if I tell the game master this, he's going to try to ruin it. I feel like that's not a very fun way to play. I feel like it's not very fun. Blue Rose Line is in the house. How's it going, Blue Rose Line? Good to see you. Mr. Vincent says, hit that like button. Yeah, heck yeah. Mr. Cheese Poof, let your friends and family know to come watch. Let's pump those views. Oh, yeah, heck yeah. Call the friends and family. Thank you, Mr. Cheese. Drew and Dragon says, yes, rooting for your players is key. I am stressed for them, and as they face danger that I facilitate. What's there is there. It's their job to solve the problem of how. It's our job to mediate and judge. Yeah, and I feel this way too. I feel it feels bad to send danger at the players that's like disproportionate, unless it's supposed to be disproportionate. If it's a monster that you think, well, they're probably going to run from it, that's one thing. But if it's like you send a monster in that you like that's supposed to fight them and it's just way overpowered, then it's like, I don't know, that feels bad. And I kind of feel like that fits in with this comment. Talk to them from the PC perspective rather than the player talking over their character. Talk to the character about how they would be motivated to do what the plot is. So that's interesting. What I do a lot of times is I'll say to them, so what does your character think about this situation? Sometimes I'll ask players that, like above table, I'll say, okay, I'm curious what, like, as your character's seeing this happen, blah, 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 what are they thinking? Like, how do they feel about this? And sometimes I'll try to get a read on like what the character is thinking or feeling, because this kind of helps to inform me like what the vibe of the moment is going toward. I don't know if any other gyms do that, but that comment made me think about that. Gonzalo says, I completely agree with Drew. Even if the players are plotting something against the BBEG, I always encourage them to run it by me so it can be done the best and I can have the consequences for the BBEG. And if players feel comfortable enough and trusting enough to do that, that's awesome. Then you're doing a really good job. Location MacGuffin's our friend. I think you're talking about Herminator. Yeah, it does sound like those are his friend. Get the kid to the place. Go rescue the queen from that place. Yes, yeah. But yeah, it's hard to control anything besides things placed within the world and then negotiating the PC's motivations toward that end goal. Yeah, so that's a conceptual, foundational, almost player style question, I feel like. And as I was saying to Herminator, I kind of feel like that should be talked about when you're even starting the game, like in the very beginning at session 0, maybe even before that when you're recruiting players. Hey, just so you know, I love to sandbox. Or, hey, just so you know, I have this plot. This is what the story is about. Are you down with running it? I think that those are important things to talk about. Mr. Vincent says, sure, it's the player's story, but it's also the DM's story as well. Come on, do the players want encounters, missions, adventure, or is it all randomness? What are we playing? That's true. It is the DM is telling a very big part of the story through the NPCs and the villains and the factions and all of that. No, they're a super big part of the story. I guess I think about it like if this is a movie, the game master is the director, and the director is making this movie with the intent to tell the story of these characters, i.e. the player characters. However, it's up to the director to decide what are the locations and sets going to be, what angles are we going to use to tell the story, who are the supporting cast going to be, what is the supporting cast going to do, how are they going to fit into the script, i.e. what are they going to say, what are their motivations going to be. I don't think it should all be randomness. There needs to be some story and order. And that makes the world believable. So I totally agree. Drew and Dragon says, write a book if you don't want to collaborate. Comes to mind a little here. Yeah, no, that's super true. Actually, I high key think it would be fun to write a book with a group of people, similar to how you play D&D, but instead of playing D&D, you are getting together and writing a book. I personally, that's a project I plan to launch one day. I don't have the time for it right now, but I think that'd be a super fun project.
Like I say, didn't we already sort of do that a while back?
Well,
GM guide or whatever.
Yeah, but I mean more like you all sit down around the table and each player has a character in the book, and then very very similar to them role playing a character, they write everything that character does in the book. So it's like a collaborative writing exercise. That's what I'm more talking about, like a novel. I think
Okay.
that'd be a super fun project. Barsakov, it's okay to sometimes put your foot down and say, sorry guys, this adventure and campaign is set in Camelot. Please don't go run away to Hibernia. I don't disagree. I think that a GM should say that if that's how they feel about it. And then we'll see how it goes. William says, howdy. How's it going, William? If anyone wants to call in, feel free to hit that call-in link. Link is pinned in the top comments. Me and Adventure Managers hanging out here, chilling, answering questions. Lots of good comments today, guys. Gonzalo says, this is kind of a hot take, but a little bit of railroading is not a bad thing. Maybe the plot can find them when they're camping in the woods, or maybe have some emotional stakes in the plot. Yes, this is true. The plot can absolutely find them. And I don't think that that's railroading. I think it's railroading to say, you're not allowed to go to the woods. You have to go to the tavern because that's the, like, and maybe so much so to the point where if they try to go to the woods, you create this weird magical barrier, like the edge of the map, where they're not allowed to go, like what Adventure Manager was talking about earlier. That would be railroading. But to have the plot find them in the woods is not railroading. That's just you creating pixels around the player characters to further the story that the players then respond to, and that's where we get action and drama and plot
and see, that becomes a bit of a question between artificial and natural. Artificial would be the enemy just knows where you are or happens upon you, and or organically it would be like, well, no, you took this item or something from someone, and now they were tracking that item, they were scrying for it or whatever. They know where you are now.
Yeah, well, that you're right. If you go, so for example, if the bad guys are waiting at the tavern and they go to the woods. Bad guys, it's going to take time for them to realize you went to the woods. At first, they're not going to know where you went. They're just going to be like, well, they're not here. We should probably go look for them. That's going to buy the players, 12 hours at least, 24 hours head start. Plus, the bad guys have to try to pick up their trail. How long is that going to take? 5-6 hours. Maybe they won't pick up the trail. Maybe they need to go find someone to try to cast a spell to locate them. What's that going to take? Another 24 hours, maybe. So this gives the players a lot of time, and building that believability into it is very important. If the bad guys just show up at the camp and attack them in the middle of the night, it's like, well, how did they find them so fast? Unless there's a real, actual, legitimate answer to that, then yeah, it is. That's a little meta, and it hurts immersion, I think. Drew says, where do they need to go? That's the biggest question for you then, because the water slide of, where they start and end, but not what's in the middle besides the direction works well here. Yeah, where do they need to go? I think that was when we were talking to Herminator. Barsakov says, it's also totally valid to say, I want to run a game like Lord of the Rings where y'all are a fellowship of heroes trying to stop the big bad. I agree. I think that's very valid. Barsakov also says, I prefer sandbox personally myself, but both types can be fun. And if the expectations are set going in, players still have so much agency within the role of typical hero trying to stop the big bad. Yeah, I agree. I'll also say that as a player character, I do like sandboxiness, but I usually follow plot lines. Like when the GM shows me a plot arc, then it's obviously like a direction my character could go. I tend to want to go there because I think, oh, this is cool. I like plots and storylines. Some player characters, though, seem hell-bent on chaos, and they don't follow plot arcs. William says, I want you to help me make a legend of my character Valenthy and unite the lands against the Queen of the West. Oh, yeah, heck yeah. Help me make a legend of my character Valenthy. That would actually be really cool. That'd be very fitting, and I think that would be a cool thing, William, for knowing in your world what's going on in Valenthy's future. I think it would be really cool for that experience to be like a formative experience in her journey. That'd be super cool. Can do. And it looks like it's going there naturally, actually. Drew says, I say that verbatim. Haha, love it. I'm not quite sure which one Drew is talking about, but heck yeah. Mr. Vincent says, I find all this weird. I've never had a player just say, later, I'm going to walk over here just because I want to. I have. I've had players do that. I have played with players before that have had zero care or appreciation for any kind of like plot lines. I'll also say that they don't make the best players all the time. I don't play with players like that these days anymore, really. And then that's the reason why. But I know that there are a lot of GMs who deal with players like that. John says, I don't like calling a DM a director. I see myself as set designer, then referee. That's fair. That's really fair.
Yeah, you're more of a scene narrator, basically, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I could totally see that. I guess when I say the word director, it would imply the director is directing the film and basically they tell people where to stand and what lines to say. So I guess that's not really the right analogy. I guess actually a set designer, or maybe even just a camera person or something like that might be more apt. So good point. Mr. Cheese Poof says, I think I should give my player a dire hybrid form since they are a shifter moon druid that has mastered wear tiger blood or keep to raw. If dire form given them stronger than regular hybrid form, give them the dire hybrid form. Heck yeah.
Yeah, just give them everything in a bag of chips. It sounds like 5e, honestly, because they're just a superhero anyway. So just give them laser vision, sure, on top of all that.
No, you got to be careful. Laser vision gets zany. That starts break immersion if it's not done really well, because that's like a superhero thing. But no, dire hybrid form sounds awesome. Make it like just a little bit stronger than their typical form, so that there's a reason to use it, and then give it a little drawback, like when they shift out of it. They go unconscious for 3 rounds or something like that. Like, that could be a fun thing. So like, I like to, sometimes if I give players free cool things, I add in a drawback. So it's like, oh, they're going to be tempted to use it, but there's going to be this little drawback they suffer. as a result. I think that's cool. It's like a self-balancing thing. Jonathan says, even when designing sandbox points of light, I try to tie them to the plot, region, theme, then world in that order, and that does wonders to hide the sandbox frame and perceived rails. Let me say, I'm going to read this one more time, but I think I agree. Even when designing sandbox points of light, I try to tie them to plot, region, theme, then world, plot, region, theme, world in that order, and that does wonders to hide the sandbox frame and perceived rails. I agree. I think that is, I would call that the classical approach to running a sandbox game that still has story elements in it. And I think that is absolutely right. I think that you're on point. Gonzalo says, I got a question. My players want to run an anime type campaign. Dragon Ball Z. And I'm trying to come up with homebrew mechanics. Do you guys have any recommendations? Like combined attacks or mid-battle power-ups?
I recommend using Blaine Simple's work because he's got an anime thing for all your anime characters and classes.
Blaine Simple? Do you know what that's called? Is it just called? Is it called?
He's a
Blaine
YouTuber.
Simple?
Yeah.
Oh, Blaine Simple. What I would say is start with very basic framework and then just build it as you go. So for example, maybe you have, and this is kind of an oversimplification, but it's actually not that much of an oversimplification. Start with just your player characters, and like if maybe you're going to play D20, start with just basic D20 stuff. Like when I say basic, I mean 6 attributes, a list of skills. They choose 1 or 2 to be proficient in. And then maybe like they have some weapon, proficiency. Maybe they're proficient with a katana or with unarmed fighting or whatever it is. And then let them homebrew their own powers as they level up and evolve their powers. Let them homebrew it, and then you just create the mechanics based on what they homebrew. Try to make it balanced. That's what I would do if I was running an anime, because that's, I think, part of the fun of an anime would be for the player characters to like create their own powers. I would think that that'd be a draw to an anime type campaign. Bleach is my favorite anime, by the way. Followed close second by Tokyo Ghoul. I think those are my favorites. I think. Really
Strangely, I like Spice and Wolf.
I've never seen that one. I don't watch very much anime. I did watch Attack on Titan or Attack of the Titan.
That was awesome.
That was awesome. The first 10 minutes of that show were metal as hell. Super metal. The first like 10 minutes of that show.
So yeah, down in the YouTube comments section, post your favorite anime.
Yeah, heck yeah.
Your top 5 favorite anime at least. Yeah.
Heck yeah. Mr. Cheese Poof, or maybe a few levels of exhaustion could work. Thanks, guys. Yeah, heck yeah. Another show that I'm really into right now is Invincible. I don't think that counts as an anime though.
It is technically a cartoon.
Yeah. Was Avatar: The Last Airbender the original
also a
one?
Cartoon.
It was a cartoon. Okay, I always kind of classified that in my mind as an anime, but
very close. Yes,
very close. I love that show. I have not watched Legend of Korra, but I want to watch that sometime. What we got is AWOL Warrior. Make the main plot haunt them until they decide to deal with it. That is actually not an invalid strategy. That's maybe they're having recurring nightmares and it's starting to make them exhausted. I don't have a problem with this.
Yes, have Sauron start whispering to them in their sleep.
Yeah. Maybe they're chosen and they're resisting it. But hey, sometimes you don't choose your fate. Your fate chooses you. That's a thing. So anyway, AWOL Warrior, I don't disagree with that approach. You got to be a little careful. I can feel bad if you're just like forcing it. But that's just called story prompting for them to have nightmares and whispers from the big bad. Gonzalo says, oh, yes, I saw his video. Thanks so much. They want a Demon Slayer theme campaign. Oh, my daughter is super into Demon Slayer, like high key into Demon Slayer. I've watched a little bit of it because she showed it to me. John says, Gonzalo, I might suggest taking the resources they use, then pooling them instead of have their own. Rage, martial arts, etc. That way they have a team component common in anime, and it lends for the ability to make a scaling system like heightened spells. Heck yeah.
I don't remember the name of it. I wanted to say Tales of Euphoria, but I don't remember exactly the name. Tales of something. But basically, it had anime classes and everything. And it came with a really interesting system there, or had its like own anime support system.
I'm sure, yeah. I've heard of some. I don't know the names right offhand, and I haven't played that much anime D&D. I did run kind of an anime homebrew game at one point, kind of. It was more like a martial arts samurai campaign than an anime, but it was adjacent. Mr. Cheesepoof says, I'm going back to work, guys. Have a great day. Thanks for the community. Always a great time. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Cheesepoof. Appreciate you. Oh, also, man, I always forget to do this. Gotta shout out our partner level and gold level Ko-Fi supporters, Solstice, David, and Craig. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. For all of you, I was supposed to shout that out at the beginning, and I didn't do it. My bad. I sometimes forget to do that. But
blame me. I jumped in too quick.
it was Adventure Manager derailed the whole thing. The whole thing. No. Anyway, huge shout out to them and to all the other Ko-Fi supporters. There's several of them in here. Mr. Vincent is in here. Blue Rose Line is in here, and probably others that have Discord names different than YouTube names. Gonzalo says Atla is the perfect way to make a story campaign because they have sandbox in his plot, character development, travel, everything. Nice. Thanks, John. I might give it a thought. Kind of a multi-class. Yeah, or custom classes. Because in anime, I feel like that's kind of the whole point is like to have a fully customized, unique character. Like in Bleach, every single character has a different power, which is super fun. I also think Bleach was a really fun show because the characters all got kind of deep, but they were all kind of one-dimensional. And I really love the way that they wrote the characters in Bleach. I think that it was a really cool way to have a lot of characters who were very distinct from each other. With that being said, I still haven't watched all of Bleach. I haven't even made it all the way through the first fight with Aizen. I'm like halfway through that fight. And I stopped watching it like 7 years ago.
Well, honestly, you could take a 7-year break in Bleach and only 17 episodes will have passed or something like that. It's honestly that much of an opera or whatever.
It is. Bankai. Yes. Yes. My favorite character in Bleach is Kenpachi. The guy with the eye patch, the chi sucking eye patch or whatever that he wore to lower his power level, so fights would be more of a challenge. And then he takes it off when things get really serious. Super fun character, and he has the bells in his hair to jingle, so his opponents hear him coming, so they're more of a challenge. Yeah, Kenpachi is the man. I agree. Shadowmain.com. How's it going? Jason C. Hey all, how's it going? Good to see you, Shadowmain. All right. Well, I think that we are going to wrap it up. It's been about an hour. Adventure Manager, thanks for hanging out with me. Thanks to everyone who chimed in. Really good conversation today, everyone. I really enjoyed this. Super fun. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, hit that thumbs up button. Join the Discord if you want to be cool like us, play cool games like us, be awesome like us. Link is in the Discord. Can come and hang out with us. I also have a free ebook, my top 10 Game Master tips, compiled from 20 plus years of running games. You can find that for free if you join my email list. You should join the email list because it's awesome. And you can also
Don't forget to put your favorite anime in the comments.
Put your favorite anime in the comments. I would love to hear it. How often do we do live videos? I do a Monday live stream at 10 a.m., a Monday news, like a GM Philosophy news live stream. And then we do this call-in show on Fridays. And right now, those are the only 2 live streams that we do. Shabam. Go boldly. Absolutely. All right, everyone. Have a great day. I'll catch you on the next one.